Okay. So today I actually thought talking about the mind, because I think it's very important to know what is mind and how it's functioning, and then you will be able to understand about calming the mind and attaining into these jhanas. And yesterday we were talking about the 5 khandhas, and you were very interested about Vedana, Sanya, and how does that work with the Arahats and all that. So in order for me to explain all that, I must first start with the mind. And I'm sure most of you know about the mind is not an entity but it's an activity, because Bhante has been always saying it all the time. But there are some newcomers here who have just come to the first time even to the temple, and they are exposed to this Dhamma to the first time here. So for their benefit, let me just start with the basics about the mind, and that's why I actually got this thing prepared, so it's easy for you all to understand. So when we are talking about the mind, let's go to the first page where it's showing the experience, where it talks about phassa. So here we are trying to explain how our perception works, because that's how the activity of the mind begins. And after this point, it's like a chain reaction. There are so many things that happens after that. But the first part, how the activity of the mind begins, is from this. From phassa, the sense experience begins. And you can see when we analyze the subject, it's a subject that seeing an object, and in the middle is that seeing, that experience itself. So I have categorized into 3 parts, where what is the subject. When we analyze, what comes down to this subject is actually what's in there in that process is Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana, Rupa. So here also please note that Bhante is using not the normal translations. So I'm actually going to go with these translations, and so don't get confused. And sometimes I will refer to you all as normally it's translated as like that. Otherwise, if I'm using the word sensation, it's to mean sanya. And if it's vijnana, we use the word perception. Actually, I haven't written it there. You can write in there. Vijnana, it's a perception. It comes with differentiation, and it's called perception. Normally, it's translated as the consciousness, and it's in the other side that I have shown you all, but the normal translation also. So this is what we find when you break down the subject who is having that experience. What's in there is this panchakhandha, 5 khandhas, normally translated as 5 aggregates, and what we call the 5 impurities: Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana, and Rupa. And in the sense experience, there are 6 types of sensory fields. Eye is very specific to have the see, and ear is specifically for the sounds. Nose is specifically sensitive only to the smells, and tongue is sensitive to the taste, and the body is sensitive to the sensations, tactile sensations. And mano, the part in the brain, that is what we call that creates the thinking or the concepts, that's called what we call the Dhamma. For the eyes, it's the Rupa. For the ears, it's the sounds. To the nose, it's the Gandha, the smells. To the tongue, it's the Rasa. And to your body, it's the Pottabha, means that tactile sensations. And to Mano, it's that conceptual thinking, we call it Dhamma. So there are 6 sensory fields there: optical field, auditory field, olfactory, and gustatory, and tactile, and conceptual field. And there is a breakdown of the object too. It's made of the dhatu, 6 dhatus. Now let's go to the next page. Turn it around, where we have the analysis of the process of perception. Not where the tree is, the other side. Yeah, before that I was actually talking about the other experience. Okay. Now, it's showing where you can see this box, analysis of the process of perception. I have put an arrow to show you where it actually starts to begin, how it starts to begin when these stimulations come to you, to your 5 senses from the environment. They come to you, and then there's a certain activity that starts. So this vijnana, or the perception, that process starts at that sense base. I think yesterday you were asking where that Vedana is actually. So it starts just at that sense base. And I guess the neurons are involved, otherwise you won't know it. So the nervous system and the brain is involved at that stage, but this is the basic starting step. And then after this perception is formed, what happens? Then we start to interpret it. We start to make concepts and start to think. This is what Buddha was calling as the mano. The activity of the mano is producing that thoughts, and those thoughts or the concepts are what we call Dhamma, and this Dhamma is written in simple D. Yesterday I actually forgot to point to Brother Bhikkhuni that he had a capital D. When it's the experience of the Buddha, what's going on in Buddha's mind, that experience, that Dhamma, we point out as a capital D Dhamma. It's Buddha Dhamma. And when it's with the normal people's concepts, interpretations, what's going on in their mind, it's depicted as simple D Dhamma. This is how you know whether it's something comes from the Buddha's mind or it's something happening in your mind that we are talking about. So normally it's Mano Dhamma and written in simple D. Then according to your thinking, how you interpret the data that brings from this perception, another process starts. That is the emotional part, what Buddha called chitta. That's where the tanha begins to start. And here you might want to notice that your thinking, your interpretation of what you perceived is actually highly influenced by the Vedana that you feel. Remember in the Panchakhanda, Vedana, Sanya, Sankara, Vijnana, Rupa? In that, Vedana and Sanya comes together because that's the beginning process, beginning of the process. When the Vedana and Sanya comes, the rest starts. How we know about this is through Vedana. And Vedana has 3 fields, remember, pleasant feelings, unpleasant side to it, or the neutral part. And this heavily influences us on thinking and interpreting the situation. And that happens unconsciously. This is where the unconsciousness really plays a big part, what we call the avijja. And we are not aware of this. We just act like the puppet. And this is where, when it moves from mano to chitta, in that unconscious reaction, the tanha gets created, or that emotional reaction is called tanha when it's happening unconsciously. And so that's a part of working of the chitta, the activity of the chitta. And then when you act upon an emotion, rationally thinking about it or without thinking at all, if you express it, it's called karma. So working of the chitta, after your chitta is being activated, and after that whatever you think, the thoughts are called chetana. You heard that word, chetana? So chetana is coming from the influence of the chitta. When it's being activated, your thoughts are not pure thoughts. Now they are influenced by the chitta. They are called chetana, normally translated as intention. So when you do things with chetana, Buddha says, chetana ham bhikkhave kammam vadami. When you put it to action, this chetana, it sets another cascade of reactions. And karma vipaka. You have to bear the results of, or you have to face the consequences of your own actions, because it sets energy in motion. So karma can be good or bad. If you just unleash your chetana and it's going to hurt or harm or damage to anyone, well, that's called akusala karma. You being producing or giving to the world something negative, what's going to come back to you also negative. And if you manage to see that and stop that, that's actually kusala karma. If you manage to stop this akusala karma that's just about to happen, that itself becomes a kusala karma. And also, a chetana can also be intentionally set upon a wholesome way. And then, if you have wholesome thoughts and you put it to action, that's again kusala karma. So kusala karma brings you the results to feel happy, to be comfortable, to be peaceful. But what happens as a result of you accumulating akusala karma is you having to face with unhappiness, suffering, a lot of hurt, pain, grief, sorrow, lamentation, whatever not, and it's heading towards the unpleasant side. Having to experience all these unpleasant feelings and having to suffer. That happens as a result of you accumulating akusala karma. So that's the basic kind of, in a nutshell or in a very simpler form to explain how the mind works. So you can see it's a very complex thing. It's not just one thing that's happening there. It starts from perception and it leads one into another one, into another one. And it gets, it kind of gathers more momentum when it kind of gets closer to the chitta. Or when you're having emotions, it's in full motion. See, emotion means motion. It's something that's moving, it has force. And if you do put that into action, of course, it's another kind of a law in the nature. It's called the karma, law of karma. That is, whatever you set in motion, that same type of what you call a reaction can be expected to come back to you. It has a boomerang effect. Do you know, or have you all seen a boomerang? in Australia they have this thing that the Aborigines have made. You throw it, it's just a piece of wood, but it's made in such a way, curved way, that you throw it, no matter how much speed you're going to throw out there, it's going to actually come back to you. Whoever throws it, it will come back to you. It won't go anywhere else. So the karma works like that. So it's important for you to understand, even though we tend to blame for our suffering to others, but you're the one who have actually created the causes and conditions for you to experience that. What you have set in motion is now actually coming back to you. So, yes?
When we are meditating,
Mm-hmm.
we're trying to be conscious. So when we are conscious, then there's a perception. We will actually interrupt at the conception stage before it goes to the emotion. We stop it. Is that what we are doing when we are meditating?
Yes, when you're meditating, the first part what we are trying to do actually is to stop forming these emotions unnecessarily, because it's something happening to us unconsciously. So the first thing you are learning is to stop this emotional activity, emotional part. So the first thing you all must do is at least to be aware of what's happening in your mind, the moods, and to know whether you are angry, whether you are sad, whether you have some fear, or whether you have jealousy. So be aware of that first. And when you're aware of it, that unconscious reaction actually stops there. It won't grow anymore. It won't develop from there. It's like you breaking off a circuit. From there, remember yesterday Brother Blitan was showing you that emotion is not just something mental, it's not just something happening just with your brain, but its full effect is felt in the whole body. It's a disturbance to the whole body. So emotions are not just limited into the brain, but when it comes to the mano part, your thinking, your interpreting situations is actually happening in your brain using the neurons, all the neuronal circuits. So the first thing is we must try to eliminate these emotions. And this is why Buddha's teachings would actually emphasize first on sila. Sila means first thing, you making an attempt not to express the emotion, because then it's worst. So first thing, you stop that action there, emotional action, your sila part. Then the next thing is now becoming aware of the emotions and trying to get rid of the emotions. And this is where the selective thinking is going to help us, because it's the wrong thinking, negative thinking, that's actually setting these emotions in motion, or that's how it's starting. So in the meditations, the other thing you are trying to handle is actually try to handle this thinking part. But we cannot handle the thinking part or deal with the mano part when there is so much calamities in your mind. We can't actually correct the way we think, because we've been taught to think like that. So this is why we start with selective thinking, saying, okay, just focus on thinking on good thoughts. That's where the Anussati Bhavana starts. Buddhanussati, Dhammanussati, Sanghanussati, Mettanussati, Asubhanussati, Marananussati, Chaganussati, Devanussati, like that. There are these meditations where you keep thinking of a good thought. So it actually stops new emotions being arisen. And at the same time, while you're doing that, if you're guarding your mind, guarding your senses, and if you're guarding your mind, and when the memory images come, if you remove them on the spot, remember you are doing that Samura and Prahana, that's going to help you a lot in here. Yeah, so now like Billy was saying, you're pretty much trying to train your brain. So you deal with the mano, and then we teach how to actually think properly. See, in the mano part, there are two ways of thinking. One is called ayoniso manasikara, one is called yoniso manasikara. Ayoniso manasikara means not thinking in terms of the reality, or you're not thinking in terms of the origins. Ayoniso manasikara is the thing that sets or arouses these emotions. But if someone can train the mano part to think in terms of origin, or yoniso manasikara, so what you're seeing is actually how this is happening, how this come to be, how it goes away, according to the Paticca. If you can train your mind to see in terms of the origins, then what you see is actually something arises and then passes away. Something arises and then it's gone. Something arises, it passes away. So you're going to see there's nothing static in there. So you're going to kind of start to understand in a rational way what anta means. If you start to think in terms of the reality, emotions will have no hold, because you're using your rational thinking now. So this is so when you keep training like this, the mind starts to become calm. The emotion starts to settle, and no longer you are giving in for the new emotions to come up. So pretty much here we are talking about a samatha samadhi. I think in the diagram I showed to you, after you have passed up to the 6th step in the Noble Eightfold Path, if you do the Sangara and the Prahana properly, eliminating the unwholesome arisen thoughts and not allowing the unarisen unwholesome thoughts, you do get into samadhi, but it's called the samatha samadhi. So there's no 5 hindrances in there. After you have reached that, you train yourself to develop sapta bojjhanga. That's when you start to train, or really the real higher training to do with your mano. Engaging your mano to see that chain reaction happening with kayanupassana, vedananupassana, chittanupassana, dhammanupassana. So it's this reaction, you're checking your body first, the bodily feelings, how you feel, and then trying to find out that exactly how you're feeling that feeling that came in that perception, whether it's a pleasant, unpleasant, or a neutral. And then you come back to this chitta to check the chitta, how is it, what's the state of the chitta. Then you come back one step to the mano process to see what's going on in the mano. So when you keep observing that reaction, we call the Dhamma Vichaya. So that begins the 2nd step of the 7 factors of enlightenment. I was only touching it because I have explained to you all fully, I think yesterday or day before yesterday. So I'm assuming now you're actually keeping up with me when I'm talking fast. So we start looking at this reaction from this end and going backwards from chitta to mano, and then after you have reached a certain state of calmness, because when you keep looking at this reaction like this, that means you're making this reaction a conscious reaction. So it won't be a reaction that's going to keep on going. But the minute you become conscious, it stops. The minute you become conscious, it stops. Because all this time it was going unconsciously. So when you keep doing this Dhamma Vichaya, keep practicing the Dhamma Vichaya, observing this reaction, then the mind starts to settle. to a great degree, where you can start to see how this perception itself is formed. And those are the final stages in the 7 factors of enlightenment. Final stage means after you pass the samadhi and upekkha. In the 7 factors of enlightenment, the last 2 is samadhi and upekkha. So when it reaches upekkha, that's where you start to see the vijnana, how it's formed, the perception. So from samadhi to upekkha means the jhanas. So yesterday you all were interested in knowing about this perception and whether arahats actually don't react to it. Remember? Because it's something that happens naturally to us. So before I could go there, I would like to begin with from the basics, so it's easy for all of you to understand. But if you have any questions up to now, you can ask before I go further. And then from jhanas, I'll take you all to the other ayatanas, they call, from the 5th to the 8th, they call the realms. They're not called jhanas. So all what we are dealing here is calming the mind to great and greater extent. Any questions? You all have heard this so many times, and also in the Bhante's talks, you all have heard this. Okay. So, Buddha actually sees Venerable Rahula kind of every morning to give him advice as to how to meditate. And he was only 7 years old, mind you, his former son. And there is this teaching actually that Buddha teach to Venerable Rahula. It's called, I'll just mention the relevant part. Buddha mentions Panchakama Gune Hitva Piyarupe Manorame Sattaya Gara Nikamma Dukkha Santa Karo Bhava. Panchakama Gune Hitva means giving up the attachments to the sensual pleasures. Panchakama, you know, it's the 5 senses. Gune means pleasing the senses. The Gune Hitva means that desire to please the senses. Pirupe Manorami means that is looking at these beautiful things and hearing beautiful sounds or music and smelling the beautiful smells or like perfumes and tasting the pleasant food and feeling the pleasant, nice sensations or the touches. Those are the 5 sensual pleasures that we try to gain. And so Buddha says to give up all that in order to bring an end to suffering. Dukkha Santa Karo Bhava means in order to bring this suffering to an end or pain or the unpleasant experiences of this life or the existence, give up going after these sensual pleasures. And you can see, I have taught you many times, I think Bhante has spoken to you many times, that it's necessary for us to give up this lesser kind of excitement, what people might call happiness, if you really want to get a greater kind of a happiness, if you really want to experience a greater kind of a happiness, it's a must that you must give up going after your 5 senses. So that's why in the retreat you are observing 8 precepts, and I have explained to you it in detail. So in this existence, that experience as it is not pleasant. Our life, if you really look into it, it's not pleasant. And also I have tried to tell you that how we try to cover up or hide the real facts. And what we do is by focusing on the five senses and stimulating them, we try to forget about that, the real facts of life. What are the real facts of life? If you really look into it, how could really one take this existence as a pleasant experience? When from the day you are born, you are actually only marching towards a death. Yeah? So there's no way actually we can say that this existence is a pleasant one, because you all know no one looks forward to die. Everyone is scared to die. Even people might say, I'm not scared of dying. But when it comes to the real moment, you will see. If that person goes to a doctor and doctor says, you got cancer, wow, you can see how their world collapses. Until you face this, it doesn't hit us. That's the problem. We see many people die out there, even our family members. But how many of you contemplated sitting in front of that coffin thinking, when I will get into this? When will the others carry me on their shoulders? Do we ever think like that? No. We just think it only happened to that person. And we are happy again. If you really want to see how this effect of death affects, get into the shoes of someone who is in a death row. Being given the sentence to be killed, or what we call that nice word, terminate the life, or what do you call it? Execution. Yes, we don't use that normal word, killing someone, but we use execution. It's much more sounds civilized. So you get into that person's shoes. People are in that death row until the last minute. They try to escape that. Not only pleading to the police or to that court system, not just they write to the president in that country. Sometimes even they write letters to president in America, because he's the most powerful person. And his words sometimes can affect that sentence. So they even try that. Why? Because everyone loves their life. No one likes to die. So you can imagine what a turmoil that keeps going on in that person's mind. You really have to get into that shoe. So after this, maybe that can be your meditation. I'll do this talk after coming after the lunch. Sit and contemplate for a minute if you're being given a death sentence, or get into a shoe. I think nowadays you see so many people on death row. You see on the internet, the TV, and you see their plead, trying to get their life back. You get into their shoes and try to contemplate. But something funny happens even in that person's mind. Now they are facing death, and they're being given a last wish. Have you heard that? Before they execute them? Whatever the wish they say, except that releasing them from the death, is kind of trying to come to a true, make it true, or they try to make that wish fulfilled, whatever the way they can. But the funny thing, you examine these people's last wishes. Do you know what comes out? I would like to eat this. I would like to go and watch that movie. I would like to spend some years. I would like to have a cigarette, or I would like to have some alcohol. See, now you're facing death, but we try to actually, the word is, distract ourselves from what's going on here by focusing on finding some pleasure through your five senses. And it's happening unconsciously to you. Otherwise you'll be so depressed and having this problem and said, what wish? I'm going to die in the next minute, so what's the point of you giving me this? So that they don't say that. They still try to derive some pleasure out from there, and what it does is it kind of deviates your attention away from what you're really facing. So for a minute you find, haha, good, and you don't know, minute by minute you're getting closer to the death. It hasn't stopped you from taking towards death. So this is how our mind works. Now, why are we not so affected? I mean, we know, rationally you know, that person is actually sentenced to death in maybe few minutes or few hours. But what about you? Are we in a different position to that person? The only thing is someone hasn't given us a time period that we will die in certain time. But we are in the same boat, heading to that, but we never contemplated this. So that's why you all have time to jump up and down, to go to movies, to cook and eat nice food, and do whatever you want to do, to go vacation, holidays, because this never comes face to face in your life. And this is why Buddha actually tells us, it's very difficult for you all to do because you will never do it. So for the monks and nuns, Buddha encourages to contemplate on the death. He sends them even away to the cemetery because it's right in front of your face now, what's going on. And so he says, contemplate. And then actually this strikes you. When this really hits you, my goodness, I'm in this position too, then the way you think is totally different. You will act like a person whose head or the turban is on fire. You start to run away from all this and try to find a solution to save you. Why you are so relaxed now is you haven't seen the fire on your turban or on your head. You haven't seen the death that's approaching you. Actually, there are so many people who died before that person in the death roll. But we never saw that. And we never contemplated that we can be in that position. So this is the problem. Anyway, if you all can, as a habit, when you meditate, I remember from last time, during the last retreat, or maybe it was the 8th day, that I actually ask people if they can, if they are really interested in progressing in this path, to set 1 hour aside to meditate every day. Otherwise it's like a joke, you just come here, do something and go back and do whatever you want to do. It's not going to help you all. So if you really want to advance in this path, seeing this danger that's lying in your ahead and wanting to find a solution to this, if you can't dedicate your whole life and 24 hours, but then at least try to put 1 hour aside, because you take so many hours to eat, to cook, to have showers, to wash, to do a lot of things to this body that you will even not be able to take or do anything when you die. But the mind, that's very important. So take some time to take care of your mind, and when you meditate, so set a time, maybe at least about 1 hour for a day, and then you must divide that 1 hour between 4 meditations. They are called the Araksha Bhavana, or they protect you from not from outside things, from your defilements. So what are they? The reflecting on the Buddha, and then contemplating on metta, Mettanusati, and then contemplating on this Asubha, the reality of your body. That's another area that I will talk later. And contemplation on the dead or the death. And then you bring Anapanasati as well. So you must practice these 5 types of meditation, and it acts as a protection for you. Because they are meant for different defilements. It's like the antidote for different defilements. So if you keep practicing these things, when you are slack in your practice, when you do the death, contemplation on the death, actually it will give a lot of energy to you. So, if there are any people here who have slackened their effort on meditation, you must take a few minutes, half an hour, 1 hour, to reflect on the death and to be in that person's shoes, that person who is facing the death row. Get into his shoes, and you will see how your body heats up and how it has an effect on your mind. And that will give you energy to not to waste time. So your sloth and torpor will go away. So that's one of the very good meditations to practice. Anyway, yes?
Excuse me, Bhante. You mentioned that when you meditate on death,
Yes.
It's likely that the energy that you get is positive. Why is that so?
No, it awakens you from a deep sleep that you were thinking you were not dying or you were so happy and comfortable. It takes you out from that comfort zone. See, if there's a fire going on here, even if you are sleepy and slow, lazy, if you see this burning, what do? You just run. You get that energy naturally. It's inbuilt in us. Remember, see how Buddha is actually using this force that yesterday that Bilitan was showing, the scientists were saying it's actually primal to us, this fear of death. So it's in our primitive brain. Over the years of evolution, that it's there to save our life. So you do get energy. So whether it's adrenaline or whatever, but it gives you a wake-up call to wake up. And then you can put that aside and then keep practicing your normal object.
One more question, Bhante.
Yes.
You mentioned about 4...
and actually 5, Anapanasati
okay.
also.
Okay. Is there any
Sequence, order?
or you just...
Now the sequence is actually Buddha Anusati. First we start with the Buddha, we pay respect to him, we have a lot of gratitude to showing us this, to knocking our head with the real sense. So we do Buddha Anusati, and then it depends whether you want to do metta here or you actually want to do the Asubhanusati, Marananusati, and then now you will have kind of a bit of a aroused situation, like you are very much full with energy. So you can use Anapanasati to actually settle you, and then Mettanusati to finish the meditation, because then you will have a cooling effect. If you stop the meditation with Marananusati, as a lay person, I don't think it's a good thing. And make sure, if you are a person who is depressed, if you are very sad about things, you all must not practice Asubhanusati or the Marananusati. That will aggravate that situation. If you are a person burning with lust or passion, you all must not touch on the metta, especially about that particular person. It will aggravate the situation. Because your emotion will drag you with a nice rational reason backing it up and contemplating more on the person you like. So it will aggravate that situation. So you need to know these two. And Anapanasati is specially used to calm the mind when you have a lot of anxieties, worries, and when your mind is not settled. This Anapanasati can help you all to calm down quickly. And Metta also helps you all to calm down if your mind is normal. So you must know, if you are afflicted with lust and passion, then your antidote is Metta. And no. If you are afflicted with lust and passion, antidote is the Asubha Bhavana, contemplation on the impurities of the body, and Marananusati. And if you are inflicted with anger, ill will and hatred, the antidote is Metta. And if you have a lot of anxieties and worries, it's the Anapanasati. So like that, now you're practicing this every day. So when you're facing a situation, you will know which one to pull out in that moment instantly. And then things can be controlled, calm down.
That means your sequence can move in and move out.
Yes. So you're training your brain, rational thinking part, to act quickly before the amygdala takes charge. Yeah? Now, I haven't actually started my the real part that I want to do, but it's now 11:30. So what do we do? I was only talking the beginning of it to show you how unpleasant is the existence before I go to the rest. Yes? I have to do my interviews also. I have some people left from yesterday. So shall we start early today?
Okay.
Maybe you're not sleeping, by the way, anyway, after lunch. I gave you a rest time to do your washing, to maybe lie down but not to sleep.
Yes.
Start 2 o'clock? Okay. So I will see you all at 2 o'clock and then we continue, and after we finish this, I'll start the interviews.
Okay.
You had a question? Yes? Yeah. Hmm? No. Contemplation on the 32 parts of the body is called Asubhanusati. I know it sounds similar. Asubhanusati. Asubha means impurities, the repulsiveness of the body. And I'll show you a CD about that too, what you think you're so beautiful and nice and all that. Last time, but I had to show you all that in DVD because there was a couple of people actually was affected by lust. So that's why I had to do it. This time I didn't, I have the CD, I prepared one specially, okay, Brother Dilithan did it for me. I didn't show it yet because I haven't still heard anyone actually being inflicted with that kind of illness. But if you all want, later we can watch, and that really shows you all the real reality when you remove the skin. You all want to? Okay. Yes. Last time I didn't have much time to actually prepare it, so he did a very quick job, but this time I premeditated and contemplated, and he actually did a good one. So this time I will show you something, if you like to watch, which will have a big effect in your mind, and which it did to me. So that's also important. See, Asubhanusati is very important because you can get attracted to anyone. You know, sometimes it's funny how the mind works. And the minute you realize, oh my goodness, you remove the skin, what you see in this person, then that desire or that lightness just drops. So it helps you out. Okay, so if there's no questions, any questions anymore? No, huh? Okay. So then we'll proceed to go downstairs for lunch. It's 11:30. What you all can do, you all can actually reflect on what I said on the sheet.